So what we've got to do, we've got to get the message out to the membership of District 90 that it's not all that hard to use the software program. It can be cumbersome, but that's all that it is. And what Jill and Tracy and Mike have come up with is Pathways Unravelled. We ran it on the spur of the moment, what was it? August the 12th. Jill had about 2 weeks to put it all together, and with Tracy and Mike's assistance, it worked, and it worked well. And what we are doing now is taking it out into the regional areas, and that's what today is about. I was hoping to get a few more people in here today, but I'm glad you all made it. It's being run and coordinated by Jill Walker. Jill is our training TLI coordinator. Tracy Causley, our Pathways Inquiry Officer. And Mike Kano, who is the District 90's first DTM under the Pathway system. So please welcome all three of your facilitators. And I have great pleasure in handing it over to Jill. Thank you, Jill.
Thank you, Udo. Welcome, and welcome to this first session when I'm going to give you some of the background and some of the positioning of Pathways. Professionally, I do a lot of training and it's an area of interest. And one of the things that we as trainers see is if you jump into the where do I click, how do I do that, what does that little bit there mean, you may well get answers, but they're point answers. So this initial session is not points at all. This will give you some of the umbrella of Pathways. And then later on, Mike and then Tracy are going to go into some of the software areas, and there you will probably get some of the more specific answers. But this session, view it as the foundation. Once you get your head around the stuff that I'm covering, you've then got that foundation and you can build bits about projects, about Basecamp, about all the other stuff on top of that. If you try to get your head around Basecamp and specific projects and so on, without that foundation, it's like trying to build a building on a foundation of air. It doesn't work very well. I like to start with this slide because from talking to a number of Toastmasters up and down the district, and I've been working with this for more than the 10 months that Udo just referred to, because for my other sins, or for my sins, other sins, whatever, I also lead the club leadership training for executives. So we've included some Pathways material in the last 2, even 3 rounds of club leadership training. And therefore I've been getting my head around it in order to work out what is relevant for those sessions. As Udo said, Pathways is the new Toastmasters learning experience. When you start to analyse it, Pathways itself is really fairly similar to the legacy programme. It is updated, so there are a lot of skills in there that would not have been relevant 15, 20 years ago when a lot of the material in the legacy programme was first written. So there is a project to write a blog, there are projects using video and so on, which even if anybody had had the words, if they had been published 10, 15 years ago, it would have been for the majority of people and not just Toastmasters. But Pathways itself is, in essence, a series of projects. Nothing less and nothing more. It is run through a software program called Basecamp, but the two are separate. In theory, we could have done pathways using paper manuals, and we could have migrated the projects from the legacy program into Basecamp. Basecamp is a learning management tool that some corporates use, and TI have loaded into it the projects and some of the resources that are part of Pathways. Basecamp is not really part of Pathways, any more than you could say the cup is part of the cup of coffee. The coffee doesn't work very well if you try drinking it without the cup, but it is separate. And you could separate them. You can put other things, edible and otherwise, in the cup. You can drink the coffee from lots of other receptacles, some that look quite similar to the cup, some that look really very different. It is possible. Might not be a good idea, but it is possible. A moment ago, we had a maze. I am hoping that by the end of this session, it looks more like that to you. In other words, the pathways have untangled themselves. Please take a seat. Tracy, do you want to get rid of some of my junk there? It's not needed now. I really don't need 4 seats all to me. Thank you. This slide is one of the many documents that you can find, and we will show you where a number of these are. This particular one is a flyer that everybody who was a member of Toastmasters when a club was visited by the Pathways Guide should have been given. And what this is doing is a high-level comparison of the legacy program as we now call it, but on this slide it's headed up today because this slide was designed to be used before areas and clubs had gone live with Pathways, and then we've got with Pathways. So this is what the legacy program gave you, and this is what Pathways gives you. So a lot of similarities, but you can also see that 5 of the things have got pluses against them. And what that is saying is that 5 of those areas that are picked out on this flyer, there is more in Pathways than there was on the legacy program. I'm not going to read that to you in detail. I don't believe in reading slides to my audience. However, Mike will be showing you later on where you can find all of these resources for yourself, and then obviously you can read it in your own time. Pathways covers 5 core competencies. So 5 broad areas of learning which Toastmasters believe are the things that people who join or who are members of Toastmasters are interested in learning about. They're actually quite similar, if you distill into it, to the things that you could learn about through the legacy program if you worked your way through and did several of the advanced manuals. So what are those 5 core competencies? The first one is public speaking. And if we do a straw poll of why do people join Toastmasters, a very large proportion will put public speaking as one of their top reasons. Interpersonal communication. So talking with, communicating with other people in small groups and making sure that the message gets across. Many people believe that talking, sending an SMS, sending an email, even, some of you in the room will remember what sending a letter is. I know Mike does from a conversation we had coming up in the car yesterday. People believe that that is communication. They're wrong. The communication has only happened when the recipient has received the email, SMS, letter, words through the airwaves, and has taken some action and fed back to you, the sender, that they've understood. Now that doesn't necessarily mean that you're saying, yep, I get it, yep, thank you, I get it. Although if you're my husband you do, but that's another issue. The point is, you do something. And whether that's, sure, I'll do that for you, Udo, or, yeah, that's a good idea, running that at the next meeting would make sense. It is something of that nature that proves that whatever the person said to you by whatever medium, you've understood and you're reflecting back. I love this next slide. Strategic leadership. And that duck, to the best of our knowledge, gets all 12, I think, ducklings across the road alive. So she's achieved something. Management. And particularly, of course, management of people. There's probably significantly more management skills and management options within Pathways than there were in the legacy program, particularly for those Toastmasters who just did the legacy program. The management opportunities came much more, as they do with Pathways, by stepping up, taking on a club leadership position, an area director position, a district position, as a number of us in this room have done. And the fifth core competency, any ideas what that's representing?
Eat the drugs.
Sorry. Nah. Any offers?
Positive thinking.
Close.
I can do it.
Confidence.
Confidence. Yes. Because I'm nice to you, there they all are again. So those 5 competencies cut through all of the parts that Pathways offers to you. I've talked about paths, we've talked about pathways. Pathways is in the title. So what are the paths that we've got? Well, there are 10 paths at the moment. There are 2 more coming, but right now there are 10 paths in Pathways. Dynamic leadership, effective coaching, innovative planning, leadership development, motivational strategies, persuasive influence, presentation mastery, strategic relationships, team collaboration, and visionary communication. So 10 parts. Having said that, and this will be touched on significantly more later on, don't worry about, oh, which one should I do? Should I do that one? Should I do this one? Is that one better? So on and so forth. Because when you drill into the detail, the differences between them are surprisingly small. It is much more on the angle that you take them. So if anybody has signed up for Pathways, and for the sake of argument, let's say you've signed up for innovative planning, and you're thinking, I don't know why I did that. I'm not a planner, I don't do projects, that's really not my bag. Don't worry. because when you look at the projects available in innovative planning, you will find 80% of them are the same as dynamic leadership, visionary communication, presentation mastery, or thereabouts. Please don't get your calculators out and start checking the numbers. So, we've had 5 core competencies. Sitting beneath those core competencies, we've got 10 paths. Please.
What are the other 2 paths that are coming out?
Mike, one's humorous or humour or
I have been told there were 2. The one that we had confirmed was humorous. I think the other one was another leadership path.
I think advanced management or something.
Advanced management. But it's 2 third paths. And then there's a mini path.
the mentoring one.
We already have a mini path called mentoring, which you access from level 2. There's a further mini path, which is, I think it's going to be called parliamentary procedures. So for those who are really, really hey, we need some people because we need a district parliamentarian. So we need some people who know how to do it. So that will be coming out. So and that was a mini path.
Can you cross me off the list for district parliamentarian, please?
You're not on my list, but
Okay, good.
I assume that will be based on Robert's Rules of Order and unchangeable.
no.
Yeah.
So it's totally useless to the rest of the world.
I think what you'll find is similar. I mean, we probably digress. This is probably more lunchtime, but I think as you discovered with the mentoring, it's more the framework. I don't think you would get into the differences between persons and colleagues and so on. But we can talk over lunch.
So we've got the competencies, we've got 10 parts. For each path,